Welcome to today's episode, Breaking Bad News, Crisis Communications Insight. We are joined by Jeff Hahn, the author of the Breaking Bad News and a long-time crisis communication strategist. He spent years helping organizations navigate some of the toughest moments, and he's just released the second edition of his book. We'll talk about what's new, how his model works in real situations, and what communicators should be thinking about as we head into 2026. Jeff, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, Frederick. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And I'll be seeing you in person in just a few weeks after charge. So that's something to look forward also.
That's right. It's very warm in San Antonio today. We're looking forward to welcoming you here. It'll be a great session, great experience.
So you've written this book about crisis communications. But for those who may not know you so well, can you share a bit about your background and the work you've done to make Breaking Bad News possible?
Sure. Well, just a little professional background conversation to set things up. I've got more than 30 years of in-house experience and agency experience in the realm of reputation management. That means promotion and protection. On the promotion side, it's typically about awareness, raising awareness, creating attention. But there's also another aspect of it. That's the reputation protection side of brand, more of an advocacy, awareness, advocacy, promotion, protection. Two sides of the same coin. They're all about brand. And my work in crisis has been obviously more on the protection side. And it's funny that crisis work is more episodic, but it certainly folds into that advocacy dimension of promotion protection, very integral to a complete brand strategy, and oftentimes overlooked as a critical dimension of preparation, being ready to respond and defend a brand if necessary.
Thanks for sharing that. But writing a book is a big undertaking. And so it's a second edition, must be mentally hard. But what inspired you to write Breaking Bad News?
Well, you're not wrong. It took me 7 years to write the first edition of Breaking Bad News. It only took me about 6 months to rewrite to get to the second edition. But the second edition is cool, I think, because it's filled with all new case studies and up-to-date more information with a broader array of industries and sectors. So I like that. To your question, though, what inspired me to write it, I guess the one word I would use is aggravation. In my early professional years, I was always in rooms. I guess I was lucky to be so when I was with Motorola. And all of the people around the conference table when a crisis was happening were what I would refer to as the suits. The suits were executives who would come sit in a conference room and they would just argue back and forth about the situation. Then in some strange formulation or fashion, they'd come up with a game plan, whatever the scenario was. It didn't actually matter. But after watching this for years and years, I came to realize that they didn't have a magical method or way of thinking that made their decisions right. They were just honestly making shit up. So this aggravated me. I felt like it was a little bit reckless, especially in high stakes situations. So with Breaking Bad News, I set out to demystify the suits and find the pattern or the thinking process in a complex situation under pressure that anyone could use at any time and start to make rational decisions under pressure. That's sort of the model at the heart of the book, is this decision-making method.
Again, respect how you communicated that. Thank you. But on that model, though, models are of all different kinds, but you actually you use your model. Can you walk us through how you actually use the Breaking Bad News model as crisis unfolds?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And let me start just by giving some credit to Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger was Warren Buffett's partner for more than 60 years, and he was the guy who inspired me in this direction. He often talked about having a lattice work of models in your heads, those models that stack together to help you make decisions. And so that thought to me made a lot of sense as I tried to demystify this arena of crisis communication. Um, and what I decided and figured out was there are really 5 big steps, 5 big decisions that have to be made. And I turned that into an illustrated model to demonstrate the most important components of what had to happen. And those 5 steps are this: assemble. And in that assembly, you assess. Then after that, you can issue a holding statement. Just create the opportunity for time to give you an opportunity to gather more information. Holding statements are very useful tools for that. So assess, issue the holding statement. Then at the heart of the model are what I refer to as the 3 M's: message, messenger, and then the method of delivery or the method of outreach, which might be, a statement, a press release, an email, a video, etc. There's a dozen of them to choose from. But these models work together in this lattice work and in sequence. With the process, what I have found as I use this over and over again is that crisis communication isn't a dark art. Instead, it's an adaptive system that anyone can learn. That's the thrill I get from it, is now I can teach how to be a good crisis communicator to anyone who's interested in the subject.
Very illustrative. Thanks for that. But more on the book. I'm really interested in the second edition also. So does the new edition include cases from the energy sector, some crises from there, and if it does, what could readers learn from them?
For sure, yeah. That's one of the things I really like about the second edition is the first was really focused on the food industry because that's a big part of our marketing and PR portfolio. But the second big part is energy and power and electric utilities. So I expanded the range of case studies that are in the book to try to illustrate the points that the model, message, messenger, and method, they apply no matter what. They all have to be determined and put into motion. So the case studies that I really enjoyed diving into, in this case, in the second edition, were in 2021, the Colonial Pipeline cyber terrorism case. I really focused on the message. What did Colonial Pipeline say when all of that crisis was unfolding? And then there's no question that in any crisis book, you can focus on messenger when it comes to the Deepwater Horizon Gulf of Mexico disaster. British Petroleum CEO Tony Hayward said, "I'd like my life back." A very famous fumble. And obviously that is a messenger problem. And talk more about that and why he wasn't the right messenger at that moment. And then we had a hurricane hit Texas here back in 2024 called Hurricane Beryl. Well, Hurricane Beryl knocked out a tremendous amount of power in the Houston, Texas area. And the utility, CenterPoint Energy, really had a challenging method of delivery problem. They put their CEO in a really compromising situation as it pertains to a press conference, which you should never do. Press conferences are terrible ideas unless you really know how to do them well. And that gave me an opportunity to, again, pressure test the model and show how doesn't matter. Energy, power, food, and a dozen other industries. I focus on the airline industries as well. The message, messenger, method part of the rapid response model really applies.
Earlier in the conversation, you used a word that starts with an S. It wasn't spaghetti. But you talk about this when the spaghetti hits the fan.
Spaghetti hits the fan.
Yeah. What is the most common mistake organizations make when spaghetti hits the fan? And you use that phrase in your book.
Right. Well, I've emphasized this idea of the 3 M's: message, messenger method, but they're kind of in the middle of a crisis. The most common mistake organizations make is failing to prepare for that crisis. So they don't have a rapid response team or a crisis team. They don't have even a way to assemble a crisis team, no unified method of calling people together. They don't have any idea who should be in charge once they get together. They don't even have a conference room or an online method of assembly. So they waste hours and hours and hours just trying to get people together. And then once they are together, it's really chaos. No one knows who is supposed to facilitate and manage the conversation. No one may know who's going to make decisions. If the CEO isn't in the room, which oftentimes shouldn't be the case, we need CEOs to do bigger level stuff. It just becomes a situation where, once again, from my early years experience, you just see a bunch of suits arguing about things. And oftentimes what I had discovered in the lack of, with all this entropy or chaos going on, it's oftentimes the lawyers who get the loudest voice in the room, and they'll say things like, "We're not going to say anything. It's no comment. We will litigate this in the court of law." In the meantime, the court of public opinion has pushed way past this much more rapidly. I mean, it really is an awful situation when you're caught between lawyers and a crisis. When you don't have any of this preparation in place and know how to work, that is by far the most common mistake I see. And it's also reputationally one of the most deadly things I see.
I mean, when you're caught between a lawyer and a crisis, that doesn't sound so good to me.
It's about the same thing, isn't it? Rock and hard place.
Yes. And I do find it perplexing that that companies don't have a plan when spaghetti hits the fan, because you have a fire exit because these things happen, and then this is perplexing to me. And yeah, expert,
It's a little bit of human nature too. I mean, what are the odds that we are going to die? 100%. We're all going to die. How many of us have a will and an estate plan and life insurance? The percentages get lower and lower as you start to ask those questions. And the common denominator between crisis preparation and our own life preparation is we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, human nature. You're right. So I did ask you about the most common mistake, and that's a fascinating answer you gave. But can you also talk about one misconception about crisis communication that your new edition of Breaking Bad helps correct?
Yeah, I think there's so many to touch on, but there's one that over time continues to materialize on a regular basis. So I've seen this pattern. And here's how it sounds. It sounds like someone advising a client that's in trouble. They'll say this: "We're going to have a press conference and we're going to get the CEO to issue an apology." Well, it's the most thoughtless advice. And the misconception here is that that's automatically true and right and will fix everything. There is no fixing. Crises have to be navigated through. You can't just paper them over and say it never happened. And so the most important thing, I think, is you don't have to be in that fixed dimension of press conference, CEO apologize. That is a mechanistic mindset. But crises are absolutely adaptive kinds of systems. There's too many things unfolding. And so what I talk about in the book and what I really deeply believe philosophically is that options and knowing your options is a much better way to be prepared. In Breaking Bad News, I give 16 standard message options, 7 messenger options, 12 method of outreach or method of delivery options. There's so much better once you know, look, I've got these options. I don't have to just accept CEO in a press conference saying he's sorry. I can actually think through my options and get to a much smarter answer.
We touched upon charts. That's going to be in San Antonio in the end of February, and where you're going to be
Can't wait.
in a key role there. And I'm so excited to welcome you there to our US edition. But can you talk about what key takeaways that you hope that participants will gain from your presentation there and your workshop there?
And some of the things we've already touched upon. When we do the workshop, the thing I want to do is bring some fun to the conversation. And crises and fun is kind of an oxymoron. Maybe it's a little bit twisted to do this, but here's how I think I want to approach the conversation. We're going to set up some scenarios. Real life, we'll base these on situations that have actually happened. And then, have you ever heard of that group, the Dave Matthews Band? Dave Matthews Band was pretty big. I think it's Australian, pretty big international famous band. But they've got this song. They've got this song called "What Would You Say," and we're going to play "What Would You Say" inside of the workshop. I'm going to put up scenarios, and I'm going to ask the participants at their tables or in their small groups to come up with a message. We're just going to focus on message. And once you go through a scenario, I'm going to say, okay, table one or group one, what would you say? It's typically pretty instructive because some groups they get serious about this. These scenarios they actually happened, and they're very serious and they're awful. So you'll have some groups who take them really seriously, but others not so much. The responses can get pretty hilarious. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the worst things that can happen. Again, it's a little bit twisted, but it's also really informative as you think about the answer to that question. What would I say? And there are so many different situations that can occur. It's a great idea to leave in people's heads that, you know what, I ought to go back to my organization and figure that out, because promotion of energy and power has to be coupled with protection of the same brands. If we don't do that thinking, we leave ourselves vulnerable.
Yeah. I like the way that, you were going to give us a tactical solutions by using your model and your scientific method. That's really what I like. What should I be asking you that I did not ask you?
When we talked right up at the top, I think that the question that we sometimes miss is we talk about brand strategy, and marketers often go right to the promotion, creative, messaging, positioning, etc. And so I think that what will be interesting to at least illuminate people's perspective is the relationship that promotion and protection have together, and how important it is for us to consider the idea of reputation. Reputation is really complicated. Um, there's an interesting theory that I'm working on for the sequel to Breaking Bad News about reputation. And the question I'm asking is, once you go through a crisis, your reputation's kind of beat up. How is it that you restore it? And why is it even important? Well, if you take it personally and think about your own reputation, one of the very interesting things that I think I'm discovering is that we we don't own our reputation. It is owned in the minds of the audience who has an opinion about us, has an opinion about our brand. They own it. Now, we control it by our behaviors, by our actions, by our words, by our messaging, but it's owned in other people's minds. And what an interesting and unique perspective that provides now to say we have to pay attention to both sides of the promotion and protection coin, because reputation is that thing, it's the ultimate outcome of the combination of those things. So that's the extra dimension, I think, that could be fun for people to at least entertain in their mind for a while. It's a good thought exercise.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, but I am glad that I asked you this question. This closes off the podcast really well, and in the way you combine those things. So I mean, we are done, and I thank you so much for talking to us and walking through your approach and the thinking behind the new edition. There's a lot for communicators and marketers to learn from. And for our audience, if you'd like to learn more, you can find Breaking Bad News at Amazon, and we'll also link it in a caption, with this podcast. So thanks for listening. I look forward to meeting you in San Antonio, and so grateful for you to join and work with us.
Very good. Thanks, y'all. See you in San Antonio.